December the 22nd, 2016. There's a moment where everything changes. A quiet street. A car slows to a stop. Two people sit inside. Nothing unusual, just another evening in a Dublin suburb. Then, movement. A figure steps from the shadows. A hand raised. Muffled cracks tear through the air. Glass shatters. A scream. And then, silence. Within seconds, a routine night has turned into something else entirely. Something that would send ripples through communities, paralyse a city with fear, and spark an international manhunt. But who was the target? And more importantly, why? This was not a robbery, not a case of mistaken identity. What happened here was something far colder, calculated, tracked, ordered from somewhere far away. It was the latest move in a long-running war, a shadow conflict that had already claimed too many lives. And now it had found another name. To understand what happened that night, you have to go back. Not just hours or days, but decades. Back to when two families walked the line between uneasy peace and blood-soaked revenge. When a handshake could mean safety or a target on your back. This is not just a story of one act of violence. It's the story of a criminal empire built on fear, of a feud that rewrote the rules of Dublin's underworld, and of a man caught in the middle of it, not because of what he did, but because of who stood beside him. This is a story of Noel Kirwan, a Dublin grandfather whose quiet life collided with the violent world of the Kinahan cartel. This is where everything begins, but it is far from where it ends. To understand how a quiet man like Noel Kerwin ended up marked for death, we need to rewind the story back decades to the roots of a cartel built in blood. It begins with a man known as the Dapper Don, Christy Kinahan Sr., who emerged quietly in the 1980s. From his early days selling heroin on Dublin streets, Christy Kinahan wasn't satisfied with small-time crime. Instead, he had ambition, global ambition. After brushes with prison across Europe, he strategically built a vast criminal network, trading controlled substances and laundering money on an international scale. By 2010, the Kinahan Empire had moved beyond Ireland, establishing its headquarters along the sun-soaked shores of Spain's Costa del Sol. Christy Kinahan's son Daniel and Christopher Jr. were already deeply embedded in their father's sprawling criminal enterprise, but the cartel faced threats. In 2010, a major police operation named Operation Shovel aimed to crush them. Yet, despite a dramatic raid and extensive investigation, the cartel walked away relatively untouched. And crucially, Daniel Kinahan emerged stronger than ever, firmly grasping the reins of power. So who exactly is Daniel Kinahan? Born in 1977, Daniel quickly rose from the shadow of his father to become one of Europe's most feared crime bosses. He was no ordinary gangster. Daniel was cunning, methodical and ambitious, evolving the cartel into a terrifyingly efficient criminal empire, moving illegal substances across continents, smuggling weapons and laundering staggering amounts of money. By the mid-2010s, his name still echoed in gangland circles. But now it was being whispered in elite boxing circles too. He'd entered the public eye as a seemingly legitimate businessman, co-funding the now infamous boxing promotion company MTK Global and advising champion boxers, including heavyweight superstar Tyson Fury. Imagine this, one of Europe's most wanted men openly operating in plain sight, rubbing shoulders with celebrities and athletes. But beneath this glamorous facade, Daniel's cartel flooded Ireland and the UK with controlled substances, heroin and illegal guns, amassing a fortune worth over €1 billion. Irish authorities linked the Kinahan cartel to at least 18 brutal eliminations. In fact, Gerry Hutch, an associate director in the United States Treasury Department, made a chilling comparison at a news conference in Dublin, declaring, "As of today, the Kinahan transnational criminal organisation joins the ranks of Italy's Camorra, Mexico's Los Zetas, Japan's Yakuza and Russia's thieves-in-law." Then, something shifted dramatically. In 2016, following a terrifying wave of gangland assassinations and public violence, Daniel and his closest associates fled to Dubai, escaping the immediate grasp of Irish police. But how long could they remain untouchable? Enter the Hutch gang, their Kinahan's most dangerous rivals. Led by the enigmatic Gerry Hutch, known famously as the Monk, this Dublin crime family had long maintained an uneasy truce with the Kinahans, a silent agreement of non-aggression that kept peace in Dublin's streets for years. But all peace is fragile, and in 2015 it shattered. What caused this sudden eruption of violence? The spark was the elimination of Gerry Hutch, nephew of Gerry Hutch, and a man once trusted by the Kinahan cartel. Gerry was accused of betrayal, even of plotting against Daniel himself. Negotiations and mediations followed. Money exchanged hands to spare Gerry's life. But in the ruthless world of crime, promises are easily broken. On a September day in Marbella, Spain, Gerry Hutch was chased down and brutally shot dead. His execution, a chilling message. Gerry's killing shattered the fragile truce and unleashed a deadly cycle of revenge that plunged Dublin into a wave of tit-for-tat violence beyond police control. Yet it was one event in early 2016 that finally dragged this conflict into the global spotlight. But what exactly happened on that fateful day? And how did it change everything? To fully grasp how the killing of Noel Kerwin fits into this puzzle, we must examine the infamous incidents known simply as the Regency Hotel attack. The day gang warfare exploded into the public consciousness and made international headlines, forever altering Dublin's underworld landscape. What happens when the violence of Dublin's criminal underworld explodes into public view? February the 5th, 2016 revealed exactly that. A day etched in Ireland's memory as the turning point when a hidden war could no longer remain in the shadows. It was meant to be a routine boxing weigh-in event at the Regency Hotel in Dublin. A crowd gathered filled with boxing enthusiasts, sports journalists and unsuspecting spectators. But within moments, everything changed. A group of at least 5 gunmen, some eerily disguised as armed Gardaí in fake SWAT uniforms, stormed into the venue carrying AK-47 assault rifles. Their target? Daniel Kinahan himself and anyone associated with him.
The court heard bullet cases from the murder scene were fired by AK-47s recovered by Gardaí in an intervention 1 month after the fatal shooting of David Byrne in 2016.
Imagine the chaos, crowds scattering, screams filling the air, bullets flying as terrified bystanders scrambled for cover. The gunmen unleashed a hailstorm of gunfire, their ruthless determination captured vividly on video and in chilling photographs. Daniel narrowly escaped unharmed, but his close friend, 34-year-old David Byrne, was not so lucky. Byrne, a senior member of the Kinahan cartel, who regularly split his time between Dublin and Spain, fell lifeless in a pool of blood, the first high-profile Kinahan casualty of this brutal feud. Byrne's killing was a deliberate strike on Daniel's trusted inner circle, a message from the Hutch gang that even his closest allies were no longer untouchable, marking the true beginning of an all-out war. How did the Kinahan cartel respond? With fury and ruthless efficiency. Just 3 days later, retaliation came swiftly. Eddie Hutch Sr., the 59-year-old brother of Gerry Hutch, was gunned down at his home in Dublin's north inner city. Eddie had never been involved in violence. His record included only minor fraud convictions. So why was he targeted? Simply because he carried the Hutch surname. Investigators chillingly described Eddie as a soft target, chosen deliberately as payback for David Byrne's killing. Eddie's death revealed a terrifying strategy that would define the feud, targeting anyone, even relatives or uninvolved friends linked to rival gang leaders when the main targets couldn't be reached. As spring 2016 unfolded, the feud escalated at a dizzying pace. On March the 23rd, Noel Duggan, a 55-year-old known affectionately as Mr. King Size for his cigarette smuggling past and long-standing friendship with Gerry Hutch, was executed outside his home in Rato, County Meath. A month later, on April the 25th, Michael Barr, a 35-year-old dissident Republican, was assassinated in Dublin's Sunset House pub. Barr was not directly part of the feud, but suspicions that he'd supported the hotel ambush sealed his fate. proof that even distant links to the plot that killed David Byrne could be a death sentence. The violence intensified throughout the summer. On May the 24th, Gerry Hutch, Gerry Hutch's nephew, was brazenly shot dead in broad daylight as he climbed into his car. Gareth had sensed danger. He even applied for a gun licence for protection, but tragically, it came too late. Just weeks later, in July, David Dahi Douglas, once loosely associated with the Hutch gang, was ambushed and killed outside his wife's shoe store in Dublin's south inner city. Yet perhaps the most heartbreaking victim was a father of three, Trevor O'Neill. In August 2016, Trevor was enjoying a family vacation in Mallorca, Spain, when he was ruthlessly gunned down, tragically mistaken by Kinahan assassins for a Hutch gang associate. By the end of 2016, at least 11 lives had been extinguished by this feud in barely over a year. Dublin had become gripped by what the Irish media described as an air of fear. The sense of safety on the city's streets eroded by this relentless wave of violence. Amid the violence, one question loomed large. How long could the Kinahan cartel sustain its ruthless campaign before justice finally closed in and shattered their empire? To answer these questions and truly understand the tragic killing of Noel Kerwin, we must delve deeper into the deadly spiral of retaliation, where even the innocent could become targets in a feud spiralling dangerously out of control. What if the person marked for death wasn't a gangster at all, but an ordinary citizen whose only mistake was loyalty to an old friend? Amidst the chaos of the Kinahan-Hutch feud, one victim's story stands apart, poignant, tragic, and entirely undeserved. That man was Noel Kerwin, better known to his friends and family as Duck Egg. At 62 years old, Noel Kerwin was no criminal mastermind. Far from it. He was simply a well-liked Dublin local, deeply respected in the northern inner city community. His unusual nickname, Duck Egg, inherited from his father, a dock worker who bore it first, hinted at a humble past rather than a violent future. Back in the turbulent 1990s, Kerwin had bravely stood up to the heroin epidemic ravaging Dublin, joining community campaigns that challenged the narcotic dealers destroying the neighbourhoods. Yes, he'd once been charged in 1996 for possessing a firearm, or perhaps an imitation, for intimidation, likely a remnant of that turbulent activism. But those days were long behind him. By the mid-2010s, Kerwin had left the city's darker edges, choosing instead the quiet, safer suburbs where he could enjoy his later years peacefully with his family. He was now simply a father, a grandfather, a retired, law-abiding man who'd long put trouble far behind him. But Noel's past would not define his fate. Rather, it was his unwavering loyalty to a childhood friend that sealed his tragic destiny. In February 2016, as the Hutch-Kinahan feud erupted into a public nightmare, Noel appeared beside Gerry the Monk Hutch at the funeral of Gerry's slain brother, Eddie Hutch Sr. A simple act of friendship, captured inadvertently by press photographers, a seemingly harmless gesture of support. Yet, the chilling calculus of the Kinahan cartel, this single photograph meant everything. Investigators would later say clearly and brutally that the only motive they could find for his killing was his association with the monk. Noel Kerwin had unknowingly placed himself directly in the line of fire, guilty not by deed, but purely by association. Imagine receiving a chilling warning from detectives. Your life is at risk and your name is now on a hit list. Noel didn't take the threat lightly. He immediately relocated to a quieter neighbourhood, St Ronan's Drive in Culloden, and installed an elaborate CCTV security system, anxiously hoping it would deter any danger. Despite every precaution, Noel Kerwin remained a marked man. Could anything truly shield him from a cartel intent on sending a message through fear? Tragically, the answer was no. Just 3 days before Christmas, the shadow finally caught up with him. Swift, brutal, and without mercy. It was around 5 p.m. on December the 22nd, 2016, an ordinary evening that would soon become anything but. Noel and his partner were returning home after lunch with her daughter in Crumlin, pulling up outside their quiet residence on St Ronan's Drive, West Dublin. Nothing appeared out of place until a lone figure swiftly approached Noel's car. Without hesitation, the attacker drew a Markov 9mm handgun and opened fire at point-blank range. 6 rapid shots rang out, several striking Noel in the head. Death was instant, merciless and shockingly violent. Imagine being inches away as bullets shatter windows, the life of a loved one violently stolen right beside you. Noel's partner witnessed this unimaginable horror firsthand, miraculously escaping physical harm, but left utterly traumatised by the brutal execution she helplessly watched unfold. Superintendent at Lunken Garda Station, Dermot Mann, said Kerwin's partner is uninjured but obviously very distressed. As the shooter sprinted away, fleeing in a waiting van driven by an accomplice, neighbours and friends were left stunned and horrified. How could this have happened to someone like Noel, a grandfather, a man beloved in his community who had long since left any association with crime behind? One neighbour summed up the disbelief shared by so many. It is ridiculous. There's no way he should be a target. Yet to the Kinahan cartel, Noel Kerwin was precisely that, a target. Simply being seen in the company of Gerry Hutch had sealed his fate, marking him as expendable in their twisted logic of vengeance. Investigators later revealed that the cartel meticulously planned Noel's assassination, even attaching a GPS tracking device to his vehicle weeks before the attack. When Noel changed cars just 2 days before his death, the assassins secretly transferred the device to his new vehicle, continuing their cold surveillance. On the day of the deadly attack, a member of the hit squad sat hidden in a nearby getaway vehicle, watching Noel's movements unfold on a laptop screen, relaying precise details by phone to the waiting gunman. This chilling level of planning, using sophisticated tracking devices, was a known hallmark of the Kinahan operation. Noel never stood a chance. Within hours, Gardaí and forensic investigators swarmed the scene, illuminating Noel's bullet-ridden car under flashing blue lights and the rapid clicks of forensic cameras. The images that emerged from this suburban driveway sent waves of outrage throughout Dublin. The Irish Independent echoed the stunned reaction of the public the next day, noting the widespread shock at the killing of Noel Kerwin, a lifelong friend of Gerry Hutch, who had not been involved in criminality for some time. Even Ireland's Special Criminal Court would later remark how deeply disturbing it was that Noel was eliminated purely because of the simple photo with a childhood friend. For Gerry Hutch, Noel's loss was deeply personal, a loyal friend taken in a conflict he never chose. As his family mourned throughout his shattered holiday, Gardaí uncovered a chilling truth. The Kinahan cartel's reach was vast, and Noel's death confirmed that in this feud, no one was truly safe. On March 28, 2017, the feud's deadly reach extended beyond even prison walls. Tom Fox, a Hutch associate awaiting trial for the killing of Gerry Hutch, was viciously stabbed multiple times by fellow inmates inside a Dublin prison. Fox survived, but the attack demonstrated clearly that nowhere was safe, not even behind locked doors. But Gardaí fought back, determined to break this cycle. Just days later, on April 4th, 2017, armed units stormed a safe house in Clonsilla, Dublin, intercepting a Kinahan hit team moments before they could carry out yet another fatal incident. Among the 3 arrested was Imre Arakas, a notorious 58-year-old Estonian ex-soldier turned international hitman, reportedly hired by the Kinahan cartel. Their target, Gary Hanley, another Hutch associate, was marked for execution. Gardaí's swift intervention, fueled by precise intelligence, saved Hanley's life. Delivering the sentence, Mr. Justice Tony Hunt ordered that Imre Arakas serve 6 years in prison, with the term backdated to April 4th, 2017, the day he was taken into custody. Yet even as one assassination plot was thwarted, another unfolded. Just over a month later, on May 10th, Hutch gang associate James Mago Gately sat unsuspectingly in his car at a North Dublin petrol station. Suddenly, a gunman appeared and unleashed multiple rounds at close range. Miraculously, Gately survived, his bulletproof vest absorbing some of the gunfire. He escaped with serious wounds, but was alive, having narrowly dodged death. But why Gately? He had openly taunted the Kinahans before, even scrawling a provocative message on a memorial for slain cartel member David Byrne. Investigations later revealed the chilling depth of planning. Kinahan cartel leaders had been meticulously tracking Gately since late 2016. Among those later accused of coordinating this surveillance was Sha McGovern, a name that would soon emerge as central to this deadly puzzle. And still the violence didn't stop. On May the 31st, Michael Keogh, a 31-year-old man who had previously been linked to both sides of the feud, was found shot dead in his car in Sheridan Court, Dublin. Once aligned with the Kinahans, later targeted by the Hutch side, Keogh ironically fell victim to the same deadly conflict that had once spared him. Gradually, the tide turned. In 2017 alone, Gardaí arrested 33 individuals tied to the Kinahan cartel, an effort led by Detective Superintendent David Gallagher that began to dismantle the gang's ground network and severely limit its capacity for further violence. As the feud's ferocity gradually diminished, Gallagher testified that by 2018, due to sustained pressure, the level of violence fell dramatically. Yet, he warned soberly, the Kinahan cartel hadn't vanished. Its leadership remained abroad, beyond immediate reach. As violence escalated and cartel leaders remained out of reach overseas, Ireland turned to its strongest legal weapon, the Special Criminal Court, to pursue justice against those carrying out the bloodshed at home. In 2018, Jason Keating became the first man sentenced in connection with Noel Kerwin's elimination. Though not the gunman, Keating played a key role in tracking Kerwin's movements via GPS and helping coordinate the hit. He received a 10-year prison. In 2022, the net widened. Gangland, Mr. Nobody Brady, a senior Kinahan figure, and Martin Aylmer, a trusted enabler, were charged with facilitating the Kerwin assassination. Aylmer admitted to supplying the trackers used to hunt both Kerwin and James Gately, and in July 2022 he was sentenced to 10 years and 4 months, 2 suspended. Brady, already jailed for other crimes, was sentenced in June 2024 to 10 years with 1 year suspended. Even the smallest roles were prosecuted. Michael Crotty, who bought €10 worth of phone credit later used by Sha McGovern in the deadly attack plot, pleaded guilty in 2024 and received 2 years in prison. All the evidence traced back to Sha McGovern, Daniel's top ally and the alleged coordinator behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Gerry Hutch stood trial for his alleged role in the 2016 boxing event Ambush, but was acquitted in April 2023 due to reasonable doubt. The verdict exposed the challenge of convicting kingpins, but also showed the unwavering resolve of the Irish authorities to dismantle organised crime, one link at a time. As the years passed and the Hutch-Kinahan feud sprawled across headlines, body counts and international manhunts, one man quietly became central to it all: Sha McGovern. A name rarely recognised outside Ireland's gangland circles, yet deeply embedded in the core of the criminal empire. His arrest in May 2025 will not only mark a breakthrough in Irish police history, it would also unravel the story of a man who, for nearly a decade, had lived as a ghost in luxury before the ghosts of his past finally dragged him home. Sha McGovern, a Dublin native born in the mid-1980s, didn't merely dabble in the Kinahan cartel's affairs. He was one of its architects in Ireland. Raised in the gritty streets that birthed many of the country's most infamous criminals, McGovern rose through the ranks to become Daniel's closest confidant. Not an enforcer on the fringes, but a strategic operator described in court and police reports as the cartel's number 2 in Dublin. When the Hutch-Kinahan feud erupted in bloodshed and bullets, McGovern was already in place to lead the counterattacks. McGovern was beside Daniel Kinahan the day everything changed, when masked gunmen stormed a boxing weigh-in and left David Byrne dead. As masked gunmen burst through the lobby, McGovern was hit in the stomach, one of the 3 injured in an ambush that left Kinahan associate David Byrne dead. The trauma didn't push McGovern into hiding, it cemented him in the Kinahan retaliation machine. In the weeks that followed, Noel Kerwin was gunned down, and later James "Mago" Gately narrowly survived a hit. Investigators would later accuse McGovern of orchestrating both. According to senior Garda officials, McGovern coordinated subgroups within the cartel. He assigned men like Jason Keating and Martin Aylmer to specific tasks: burner phones, GPS trackers, getaway cars. Cell site data, surveillance footage and insider testimony would eventually tie off all these operatives back to one hub: Sha McGovern. And yet, as his foot soldiers fell to arrests and trials, McGovern vanished. After the Boxing weigh-in attack, McGovern quietly fled to the United Arab Emirates, not as a fugitive on the run, but as a man slipping comfortably into exile. Dubai, with its sun-kissed skyline and luxury towers, has become the new command post for the Kinahan cartel. Alongside Daniel, Christy Kinahan Sr. and Christopher Kinahan Jr., McGovern adopted the expat lifestyle. Far from the streets of Dublin, he was living openly and lavishly, and most importantly, untouchable. Ireland had no extradition treaty with the United Arab Emirates. European arrest warrants had no effect. While Irish courts convicted his co-conspirators in the Noel Kerwin and James Gately plots, Sha McGovern remained out of reach, insulated by palm trees and petro-diplomacy. But pressure was mounting. Gardaí, backed by Ireland's Justice Ministry, launched a slow and patient campaign of diplomatic pressure. The breakthrough came not from Dublin, but Washington, D.C. In April 2022, the United States launched an historic strike against the Kinahan cartel. The US Treasury officially designated Daniel, his family and 4 top lieutenants, including Sha McGovern, as members of a transnational organised crime syndicate. Their assets were frozen, US businesses were forbidden from engaging with them, and a $5 million bounty was offered for actionable intelligence. In Dublin, Gregory Gachanis, an associate director at the US Treasury Department, told a news conference, standing alongside Irish ministers, and compared the Kinahans to Italy's Camorra, Japan's Yakuza, and Mexico's Los Zetas. It was the clearest global signal yet. This was no local feud. The Kinahan cartel had officially become one of the world's most wanted criminal networks, and Sha McGovern was part of that core. Emboldened by international support, Ireland doubled down on its efforts. In October 2023, Minister for Justice Helen McEntee flew to Dubai to finalise a bilateral extradition treaty and mutual legal assistance agreement with the UAE. Though not retroactive, the treaty opened a door. McEntee delivered a sharp warning while standing on Emirati soil. Any criminals who inflicted misery in Ireland and thought they could live carefree in foreign luxury were mistaken. Behind closed doors, another critical step unfolded. Interpol, acting on Ireland's request, issued a red notice for Sha McGovern in 2024. That autumn, Dubai police made their move. McGovern was arrested and held as officials in both countries negotiated his handover. On the 18th of May 2025, the newly signed treaty took effect. Days later, Ireland and the UAE arranged a one-off pre-treaty transfer. On the 29th of May 2025, Sha McGovern became the first person of his kind in history to be extradited from the United Arab Emirates to Ireland. His flight home was unlike any he had taken before. Accompanied by armed Gardaí, he arrived at Casement Aerodrome aboard a military aircraft, an Airbus CASA C295. That same evening, McGovern stood before a special sitting of the Special Criminal Court in Dublin under armed guard and heavy security. He wore prison-issue slippers, a grey t-shirt and spoke only to confirm his name. The state read out 5 charges. First, the elimination of Noel Kerwin, an honest man shot in front of his partner just before Christmas 2016. Second, the direction of a criminal organisation involved in that elimination. Third, facilitation of the same gang in orchestrating Kerwin's killing through surveillance, planning and logistics. Fourth, directing criminal activity targeting James Mago Gately. And fifth, facilitating a conspiracy to the fatal incident involving Gately. McGovern's barrister hinted at a challenge, questioning the legal grounds of his arrest and the court's jurisdiction, but the judges stood firm. McGovern was remanded in custody. He would next appear on the 5th of June via video link. Now, the man, once second only to Daniel, resides in Portlaoise Prison, Ireland's most fortified facility. His cell is isolated and monitored 23 hours a day. No contact with other inmates, no access to organise, influence or escape. Even the prison's exercise yard has been altered, shielded from drone surveillance. Inside, his closest neighbour is a convicted double eliminator. Outside, his world has collapsed. Once living in high-rise penthouses, he now lives in absolute solitude. And while McGovern remains silent for now, authorities are watching closely. With him in custody, a door has opened. Garda Commissioner Drew Harris has said, "Our focus now turns to the remaining hierarchy of the Kinahan cartel." One question lingers. Will Sha McGovern hold the line? Or will he become the crack in the armour that finally brings the Kinahan empire crashing down?